The crypto market is more exciting than ever right now, and we are constantly faced with new questions which we'd like to address in this video. First, we received this question. CFTC and SEC just clarified that most crypto assets are not securities. Is the Gensler era of uncertainty finally over for the US crypto industry? That's a great question, and honestly, the answer is yes and no. On one hand, this is a big turning point. The CFTC and the SEC have started to clarify that many crypto assets are not securities, but more like digital commodities. And that's very important because this uncertainty has been one of the biggest problems for the crypto industry over the last few years. Projects didn't know if they could get sued. Investors were careful and large institutions stayed on the sidelines. This could start to change now. More clarity means more trust, more capital, and probably more innovation. But, and this is important, the uncertainty is not completely gone. Not every token is automatically safe. The SEC can still classify certain projects as securities. And areas like DeFi and staking are still not fully regulated. So what we are seeing right now is a transition. We are moving away from the Wild West towards a more regulated market. But we are still in the middle of that process, and these transition phases are often the most interesting ones, because they build the foundation for the next phase of growth. Okay, let's move on to the second question. The Fed held interest rates again, and Bitcoin dipped to 71,000 US dollars. With inflation fears tied to the Middle East conflict, is a macro environment still the biggest enemy for crypto? That's also a really important question. And right now, the macro environment still plays a huge role in crypto. We just saw the Fed hold interest rates again. And at the same time, Bitcoin dropped to around 71,000 US dollars. That's not a coincidence. When interest rates stay high, money becomes more expensive, and that usually means less liquidity in the market. And crypto depends heavily on liquidity. Now, on top of that, we have rising inflation fears, especially linked to the situation in the Middle East. Higher energy prices can push inflation up again, and that puts even more pressure on central banks to keep rates high. So yes, macro is still one of the biggest forces in crypto right now. But here's the interesting part. Crypto is starting to become more resilient. We've seen Bitcoin hold relatively strong compared to traditional markets in some periods. And long term, many investors still see it as a hedge against inflation and monetary instability. So I would say this. In the short term, macro is definitely a headwind. But in the long term, it could actually become one of crypto's biggest tailwinds. And that's exactly the tension we are seeing in the market right now. Bitcoin tried to break 76,000 US dollars but failed. It's now consolidating between 65 and 74,000 dollars. Is this a healthy accumulation phase or a warning sign? That's really an interesting situation, because it can actually be both. On the surface, Bitcoin failing to break $76,000 might look like weakness. But consolidation between 65 and 74K is not necessarily a bad sign. In many cases, this kind of sideways movement is a healthy accumulation phase. It means the market is taking a pause. Buyers and sellers are finding balance, and stronger hands may be building positions. But, and this is important, there are also some warning signals. Options data shows that traders are increasingly heading for downside risk. especially going into the March 27 expiry. That tells us that large players are not fully confident in an immediate breakdown. So what does that mean overall? Right now, the market is in a decision phase. If Bitcoin can hold this range and build support, this could be the base for the next move higher. But if we start losing key levels, especially towards the lower end of the range, then this consolidation could turn into a deeper correction. So I would say it's a healthy structure for now, but it's also fragile, and the next move will likely be decided very soon.